If you want data to persist in your SwiftUI app, you basically have three options. The first one is app storage, which is used for small amounts of data, like let's say one integer or one string. CoreData, on the other hand, is used for much larger amounts of data, and you can get a lot more complex with it, adding relationships. SwiftData is the newer version of CoreData that was released just this year, but if you want things to be backward compatible, then CoreData is still your best bet, and CoreData is what we're going to be using for our app. And if you ever hear the term user defaults, just know that app storage is built on user defaults, and it's just a way to use it in SwiftUI. Happy coding! What does your app architecture look like? For me, I'm building a tracker app on Real/Shorts, and I need to be passing a view model to my home screen view, and then from my home screen view to my settings page. And right now I've been using the preview feature, which is just what appears on the right-hand side when you're working in Xcode. And if I keep using that preview feature, what I'm going to need to do is pass in my view model to my home screen or my view model to my settings page. And those view models are not going to be connected to each other. And that's an issue because I want the same data to appear everywhere. So what I'm going to be doing from now on is using the simulator. And the simulator is different from the preview because it actually simulates your app in a real device. And I'm going to be calling my view model from the app main file and then passing it into my home screen and then to my settings page. And you guys are going to see what this looks like over the next couple of reels, so be sure to follow for more. Happy coding! Hey guys, so today what I want to do is pass my view model to my home screen view and then from there to my settings page from the app main file in my app. And so this app main file is just at the top, and you can see that little app main above the struct. And what I'm going to do is add my home screen view to the window group because that's the view that I want to load the first when somebody opens my app. And I'm going to be making my view model with state object. And I'm going to be passing that in with .environment object and then the name of the view model. And then in my home screen view, I can do @environment object var VM and then just specify the type for my view model. And from there, I can do the same exact process for the settings page. So I can just use that .environment object again, and then just declare that environment object in my settings page view. And so what this does is it ensures that only one instance of the view model is created for my entire app. But in order to get this to work, I'm not going to be able to use the previews like I was previously, and instead I'm going to be having to use the simulator. And I'm going to be jumping into that in the next reel. Happy coding! How can we use the simulator in Xcode? So this is actually really simple. All you have to do is go near the top left and click this little play icon. And once you play it, you'll see that a little stop icon appears right beside it. And then what you need to do is wait, because loading the simulator takes a long time. Especially if this is your first time, it'll take even longer. But even after that, you can expect to wait about 10 to 20 minutes. And once that's done though, your app will open and you can see how your app will look on a real device. And the issue that we're going to be dealing with over the next couple of reels though is that right now my app does not persist the data. And that's just a fancy way of saying that if the user closes the app and reopens it, then all of the data is lost. And we can see how all of the values just reset to what they were previously. And that's obviously a problem because if a user is tracking something, they definitely want those values to persist between each session. And we're going to be solving that using CoreData over the next couple of reels. Happy coding! Here are the first 3 steps to use CoreData in your SwiftUI project. The first thing you need to do is import CoreData at the top. After that, you can make a constant of type NSPersistent container, and then you're going to need to set up your init. So init is just a fancy way of saying that this is the code that's going to run first whenever this class is created. And inside of our init, we're going to set this container equal to a specific NSPersistent container whose name we haven't specified yet because we haven't made the CoreData file. But after that, we're going to load persistent stores. And this is just a fancy way of saying that we're going to be fetching the data that we have saved in CoreData into our app. And if there's an error here, we're going to handle it with an if-let statement, but otherwise everything should work as planned. And in the next reel, we're going to be actually making the CoreData file to go along with this. Happy coding! Using CoreData in your SwiftUI app can be super easy. We added some of the base code last time, and today we're going to be taking a look at tab model, because an array of tab model is basically what we need to be storing between app sessions. And we're going to be using the values inside of this model inside of our CoreData file. But the first step is just to right click and go to new file, and then inside CoreData, select data model, and then you can name this whatever you want, but I'm going to be naming it tab model container. And next time we're going to be adding in entities and things like that. But for now, what I want to focus on is that you need to copy this name exactly into the NSPersistent container name section in your view model. Because if there's any typo, or often even if the case is different, it's not going to work. So be sure that you have this name copied in exactly. And then in the next reel, we're going to be formatting the CoreData file further. Happy coding! Do you know how to add an entity into your CoreData file? It's really simple, and we have this tab model to base it off of. So all I'm going to do is click this Add Entity button near the bottom, and then I'm going to be adding in my attributes to the entity. And think of the attributes as the values that you want to store. So I have my name, I have whether or not to reset, I have the increment, the main value, and also a background color, which is actually of a custom type, but I'm going to be leaving it as string for now. And for the name for my entity, I previously named it tab model, but I thought that it should be different from the model that I already have, just so Xcode doesn't get confused. And so just before I end this reel, one more thing is that I want to see if my CoreData is loading in successfully. And for that, I already have the code to handle an error, and I can just add an else statement. And so if it reaches the else, that means that everything was successful because there was no error. And after that, I can launch my simulator. And after waiting a long time, I can see in the console that I am getting the successful message, which means that everything's working. Hey guys, so in the last couple of reels, we've been adding CoreData to our app. And the next step for that is to be able to fetch the data. And fetching the data just means that we can get it in a way that's usable in our code. And for this, I'm going to be making a function with a request, and I'm going to be specifying the name of the entity inside the parentheses and after the NSFetch request. And then below that, all I have to do is add a try and then container.viewContext.fetch and then the request that I made right above it. And the only issue with this is that because it has to be a try, we have to wrap it in a do catch. And what that basically means is what we want to do is we want to try to get this data. But in case it doesn't work and there's an error, we can catch that error and then we can print it out. And then once we have that done, all we have left is just Xcode telling us that we aren't actually doing anything with the data that we're getting. And we're going to be fixing that in the next reel. Happy coding! Hey guys, and welcome back. We are setting up CoreData in our app. And in the last reel, we made this fetch data function, but we didn't really do anything with the data that we were fetching. So I want to just jump back to this @published array. And what we're doing right now is we're using this dummy data throughout our app. And a lot of our code relies on this, but what I'm going to do is actually comment this out and make a new @published array of the same name, but with the type of tab model data. And so we're switching from the type of the tab model to the tab model data, which is the name of the entity in our CoreData file. And then in our function, all we're going to do is set this array to the data that we're going to fetch. And so this is going to allow us to use that data in our code, but it's also going to result in a lot of errors where the array was being used previously because of the change from tab model to tab model data. And so we're going to be taking care of those over the next couple of reels. Happy coding! Hey guys, and welcome back. Today I just want to take a moment to explain what we've been doing over the past couple of reels. So we have this function to fetch our data from CoreData, and we had this @published array of type tab model. And so if you don't remember, this was the custom struct that we made near the start of this series. But now what we're doing is we're transforming that into an array of tab model data. And tab model data is the name of the entity inside our CoreData file, which in essence has a lot of the same stuff as tab model, but it's a different name and it's being used with CoreData, and so it's a different type altogether. And so in our code, as you can see, we have this error here where we're returning a tab model, and so that's not going to work anymore because we need tab model data. Or in another file, we have stuff where we're passing things in, but it's saying that they're of a different type. And so these are the kind of errors that we're going to have to tackle over the next couple of reels. Happy coding! How can we tackle basic errors in Xcode? So what I'm trying to do is move from an @published array of type tab model to type tab model data. And so the first error I'm having is this function, which is supposed to return model @index. And it's returning a tab model, but now since the array is of type tab model data, that doesn't work. So all we need to do is just change that type to tab model data. After that, we can head into our home screen view, and we're passing a lot of values into a tab screen view. And the issue is that the type is different. For example, for one of them, it's a int64 instead of an int, so we can just fix that by casting it to an int. But for some of them, it's more complicated. For example, for background color, I had made an enum, and it was of a custom type before, but now in CoreData, it's of type string. So that's going to require some more complex error tackling that we're going to get into the next reel. Happy coding! How can we store values with custom types in CoreData? So what I'm trying to do here is store a background color value, which is of type string in my CoreData, but before it was of type background color. And background color was this enum that I had made previously. And to fix this, what I'm going to do is extend tab model data, which is the name of my entity. And I'm going to be using a variable that I'm calling .bg color to stand for background color, and it has a getter and a setter. And so what the setter does is it says that the background color will just be set to the string value of whatever its case is. So in my enum here, each value has a specific string that goes along with it, and that's what we can store in CoreData. But when we're getting the value, we can return the case of the background color that is aligned to the string that was saved. And what this line basically is just return background color dot init, the raw value background color, meaning that whatever value of the enum is associated with the string that's saved, just return that. We have these double question marks just because we have some optional things, meaning that in case there's nothing there, the code wants some value that it can return so the app doesn't crash, and that's why I have just blue written there as a base color. And so after all of this setup, what this means is that wherever I was using .background color before, I can use .bg color, and it'll work as it was before, but now it's integrated with CoreData. Happy coding! Are you adding CoreData to your app? Well, you may encounter some of these errors. The first one is that if you're using a string in CoreData, it's an optional. So you need to provide some value for the code to display in case there isn't a string there. And we can just do that with 2 question marks and then some value that I'm putting just as name. After that, we have an error where we're asking for a tab model when we need to be asking for a tab model data. And that's because we are transferring our previous code to work with CoreData. And so after I have that fixed, I didn't see any errors coming up, but I knew that the way my code was implemented, there had to be some changes I need to make. So I tried using Control-Shift-K, but when that didn't work, I restarted Xcode, and then it showed me the errors that I need to fix. And so one of them is that I need to be using .bg color instead of .background color because of the way that we've implemented our code in the past couple of reels. And another place, it said that there's some type-related error, but it was the same thing. I just need to use .bg color. And after that, in one place, I was having an error with my name, and I realized that I didn't really need the double quotes and the backslash because the thing that I was applying to the text was just a string, but that wasn't the reason for the error. The reason was that I hadn't supplied the optional like we were talking about before, and so I did that again, and after that we are ready to move on, and our entire code is ready to work with CoreData. Happy coding! If you're adding CoreData to your SwiftUI app, this step is a must. So what we've done so far is made the container, we've made an array, and we've used an init to load persistent stores, and then we have a fetch data function. But what we don't have is a save data function. And so what I'm going to do for that is write try container.viewContext.save. And actually this is it, but the problem is that because this is a try, we need to wrap it in a do catch block. So we're going to do this statement, and then we're going to catch an error if it occurs. And this is the same process as the fetch data. Now, the only thing is that we need to understand that things we store in CoreData are not going to be reflected in our code directly. And to use them in our code, we need this app published array to be updated. So the easiest way to do that is just to call our fetch data function after our try statement. And once we're done with that, our code should work as intended, and we can use this function to save any changes we make to CoreData. Happy coding!